So today we're going to work with a library called Ion Auth, and we'll start working on our authentication for our project. So this is how we left off the project on the last episode. So the first thing we need to do is look at our controller, our home controller. So the home controller will now be our login system. So let's work on that. So the first thing we need to do is actually rename this controller. Let's call it Auth for authentication. Let's remove this view. Let's open this view and remove it as well. Okay. Now let's rename this file and call it auth as well. And then let's go into our routes and configure our default route, and let's call it auth index. Okay, and the default controller will be auth and default method index. Okay, so now I have a blank page because that's what I have here, but there's a few things we need to do to work with Ion Auth. First, there's two ways of doing things. The first way is to actually load the library and start building your authentication methods yourself. The other way is actually use everything that Ion Auth comes already built in. So let's look at Ion Auth and how it's structured. So let's go ban admins. So we have this config. And we want, the first thing we need to do with it is actually copy this config into our config folder. So let's do a file duplicate, and let's send this to our app config Ion Auth. So now we have in our config folder, we have an Ion Auth. So if you remember in our last episode, we actually renamed the tables that came with Ion Auth. So we need to actually say that this is the name of the tables that we're using, because you remember I named them this way. And if you see here, the namespace that is declared here is Ion Auth config, but that's wrong now, because now I need this to be in our config folder. So this would be in app config. So if you go into our config, you have app config, Codeigniter base controller, name config, cache namespace config, constants. Okay, so this is actually just config, will work just fine. But the class down here, I need it not to be extended to this one, but extended to Ion Auth config. Ion Auth. Okay, so far so good. But we are still not using Ion Auth. So let's open the controller. And let's change a few things here. So the first thing we need to do is this extends base controller. We need this auth controller to extend the controller in the vendor folder. So let's go into our vendor folder and let's look into the controller. So I have a controllers and I have an auth. And this is the namespace that is declared. So let's use this one in here. And actually we need to the class name as well. So auth. And then we can remove this. And now we have an error because this doesn't exist. Okay, obviously, because I'm missing a slash there. Okay, and now I have a login form because since this is extending to this controller, and this controller, it has all of this. So it's actually loading this function here in doing all of this. The only thing that we need is actually to create a public method here called index, because our index method here shows all the users and is basically our user management. But I don't want this. Under Auth, I still need a couple of lines from this. I need this here. Okay, so if the user is not logged in, I'll redirect the user to Auth. Else, we're going to return redirect to dashboard. Okay, this will be our controller that we'll be creating, that we'll need to have a login created to access. So if I do this, now I'm here again. Okay, that's good. And by default, Ion Auth has one user created. The user normally has the email admin@admin.com, and the password is password. So if we try something else like this and a password that doesn't work and try to log in, I get an error, incorrect login, because the user doesn't exist. But if I try to log in like this and do password, because that's the correct password, now I'm redirected to dashboard. So everything is working because now I'm at dashboard, and now if I try to access the index, I'm also redirected to dashboard. So let's create a new controller. Okay, let's call it dashboard. Okay, so let's save it in our controllers folder. Okay, and now let's just put something here like okay. So if I try, I'm at the correct spot. So in this video, I'm not going to worry about any views and layouts and stuff like that. I just want to have the authentication system working, and for now it's working. But the problem here now lies that if I do auth logout and then try to access dashboard, I still have access to dashboard. See? So what we can do this in two ways. The first way is just copying this and like having this here. Okay, and if not logged in, redirect to login. Okay, so if I try this again, I have an error. Why? Because I don't have Ion Auth loaded. But this is, I could just load it Ion Auth here, but this is not something that you want to do. So what we want to do is actually create a filter. So let's go into our filters here and let's declare a new alias. Let's call it auth, or let's call it check login. Okay, this will be in app filters, and the class will be check login class. Okay, and down here we need to declare a new one. Let's copy the example they have here inside this. Okay, something wrong here. Okay, I'm missing this. Okay, and let's call it check login. That's what I have done up there. Okay, and let's run it before dashboard. and dashboard with no slash there. Okay, and now we need to create the filter. So CI filter. Okay, the filter name will be check login. Okay, and let's save this into filters. So check login.php. And if to test if the filter is running, I just here filter before, and if I test this now, I have here filter before. So what this does is this function here, this function will always run before all the functions running in this controller. So what we need to do is actually verify if the user is logged in here and not in the controller here. So this way, if I need other controllers to be protected by a login, I just need to go in here and just add them to this array here, and they will be protected. So I don't have to manually check all the controllers that I create moving forward in the application. So how do we do this? First, we need to load the Ion Auth library into this filter here. So to do that, we just do this. So Ion Auth, new Ion Auth libraries, Ion Auth, and the Ion Auth now is in this variable here. And now we can just do if, let's just copy this from here. So let's use the same if we had there, but we just need this. So if the user is not logged in, we'll be redirecting the user to auth login. Okay, and there's nothing more to it, it's just this. So let's try again. Okay, and now I'm in the login page. Okay, so if I try to access dashboard now, I don't have access. If I do my login, I'm redirected to my dashboard, and now I can actually put a link there to log out. So instead of doing this guy here, I'll just echo a link so we can log out, and then on the next episode we'll actually create the views and put it all together with the out system and our template to manage the contacts. So let's just do this for now. Auth log out. It's just so we can actually log out from our application. Okay, so if I click this, I'm logged out, and let's do it one more time. And now I'm logged in. Okay, so that's it for today. We just learned on how to use the Ion Auth library. There's a lot of things that you can do with the Ion Auth library. You can see the documentation here. So if you look into Ion Auth here, we'll see that if you go into the branch, for the version 4 of the application, then we'll have here a user guide. And this is all you can do with the framework, with the library. So this is how you load the library. This is all the configs that you can do. I really advise everyone that uses Codeigniter to use this one or this one. Okay, so this is another auth library for Codeigniter. This one was actually created by the same guy that actually created the Codeigniter framework, the version 4. So this is actually pretty good. I'm more used to Codeigniter because I used Codeigniter in Codeigniter, use Ion Auth in Codeigniter 3, so that's what I use. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing and give it a like. And if you have any doubts on how this works, please leave a comment and I'll be sure to answer all your questions. Thank you.